Hello everybody, welcome to Traffic Time with Jaime. Today's topic is going to be, am I a good dad? In general, am I a good parent? Over the last couple of days, watching a couple of videos, watching a couple of posts by, just random creators. I've seen it several times where the same questions come up. And typically it goes back to the same thing, but it makes you kind of question if you're on that right track, right? Questions like, am I doing enough? Am I providing enough? Am I gone too much? Am I overworking myself? Am I yelling too much? Am I doing too much? Am I forcing to do too much? Am I not pushing to do enough? Have I set the right example? Have I set them up for success in life? Also depend on their age, the age of your kids. What have you done to get them ready for the next stage? Usually that 5 and below stage, you want to make sure they're learning and reading and getting ready for school. You want them to have a successful start in life. Then as they get into that elementary, middle school, what life lessons are you teaching them? There's puberty, there's girls, guys, friendships, all of that, rushes through most people. I think, especially in my situation, that I didn't have the same guidance that I'm giving, my kids. It makes it difficult to really compare and say, well, am I doing the right thing or not? And I know a lot of people say, well, there isn't an actual book on the right and wrong. It's based on society and people's opinions. Doctors, psychologists, they have a lot of input on that, right? It's all based on stats and how people succeed and what they may start on in life. That allows us to have that data. But in general, if you just think about and ask the average adult how they're doing in life and how their social life and mental state, how their financial status is, and where that aligns to what they were taught from their parents, typically those that had a lot of input from their parents have a better, most part, that I've noticed is they have a better situation, if you want to call it that. They're in a better state, better emotional state. Financially, they're set a little better. Not always. You can't control an individual. A parent can only do so much, and I understand that. For the most part, look, at cousins, at friends, employees that I've had in the past, the ones that have the most involved parents, the most life lessons, tend to be the most successful ones. One thing that my wife and one of my cousin's wives had mentioned a couple years back, she had stated, for as little as your parents contributed or taught you in certain areas, despite any issues you might have had or any lessons that were not taught, you guys have become great role models and great parents, great husbands, which is a great compliment. I appreciated it. And my wife tells me all the time. Obviously, I'm not perfect, and there's plenty to work on. We do have those conversations as well regarding what am I missing, what I need to be involved in, what conversations I should be having with our son specifically. We had a situation when our son was younger. Myself going through new jobs, trying to get promoted, trying to do everything I could to provide for my kids, and my wife, and our son actually brought up that, I was never at home. How was he going to understand at, 5, 6, 7 years old that I needed to be away in order for us to provide what he needed? But up until a certain age, and some people up until they're adults, they don't really care about the objects or the things they get to have. They enjoy the time with their parents. They enjoy the conversations and just hanging out, just feeling safe and knowing that your parents are there is what really matters to a lot of people. And I can say from my personal experience that I agree. Growing up, yes, I had both my parents, but I didn't have that emotional connection that a lot of my friends and family and cousins, did with their parents. It was structured. It was like military based. Even though my parents were not in the military, it was just do what I say, do it when I tell you, how I tell you. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Go to work, save money. Vague ideas and lessons were told and yelled at me, but not necessarily step-by-step guidance on this is why you should do this and why you should do that. And again, went back to aside from just am I being at home enough, I have taken different career paths over the last couple of years to make sure I am there, I am available, not only for my kids but for my wife, right? And another thing is, now that I am there, now that I'm at home, how am I utilizing that time? It's taken me a while, even till now. It's still a little difficult, just because of how ingrained it is in me, and just the personality that I grew up with having is my temper and the outbursts that I'll have, and a lot of it does come from my dad. As much as parents in our generation, a lot of millennials parents, especially in minority groups, they'll tell you is, yes, we were perfect, we didn't have a lot of guidance, but it's difficult still to accept that, because you should know if it's right or wrong to scream and yell at a child for doing something they couldn't control, or not doing something that they haven't been taught to do, which now our generation is trying to break, and I feel like a lot of people have broken that. I know there's a fine line between that joke of gentle parenting and how to discipline kids. Yes, you can go too far on either end. There's a nice middle ground, which I feel like without my wife, I wouldn't be where I am now. As far as the stern and loving direction we give our son, now our daughter as well. We obviously don't just yell up the wall. We don't just say it because I said so. Our son is now at an age where he understands that we've guided him in the right path his whole life. And my wife points that out all the time, is you shouldn't question when we're giving you direction that's not putting you in danger. If it's not putting you in danger, then you should know whatever direction I'm giving you, you should just follow, because that's what you're being told. Until you go off and live on your own, then you can have your own rules, right? But then that leads to that next conversation is, for those of you that have older kids, right? They're teenagers, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old already, might still live at home, but they're getting into that time frame where all it takes is a big argument for you to bring that up again and say, while you're in our home, or while you're under this roof, if you do as I say, they might just up and leave. And I feel like that is a big fear for parents. It definitely is for me, in the sense that when our kids leave our home, I want to make sure they're going to be as successful as they could be. If financially stable. They know what decisions to make, at least the bigger, choices and decisions in life. And at least from those experiences, they'll be able to make, choices moving forward from there. But in my personal situation, I was in that same boat. I couldn't tell you, I couldn't recall the exact verbiage of that argument or that conversation, but it was pretty much just that: is if you don't like it here, then leave. And unfortunately, I had packed up and I did leave. So I don't know if I regret that. I don't think I've ever reflected on it, if I regretted leaving that way. I do talk to my parents, but not in the same way that I feel like I would have liked to. I don't have that relationship that a lot of people do with their parents. And it's a little bit because of that, right? Just the type of situation and the type of environment that they provided when I was young. I want to make sure that I don't provide or give off that same energy to our kids, because I definitely don't want them to feel pressure to just want to leave as soon as they can, just because they don't want to deal with what they have at home. Again, luckily, I've been blessed with a wonderful wife that's been nurturing and been able to help me be there for my kids in a way that I might have not been able to do so on my own, or maybe even with another person, because not everybody can set that same tone. Not everybody can stand up to their spouse and say, you know what, you're not going to talk to our kids that way. Some parents will just say, you know what, I'm going to respect my spouse, my partner, I'm going to just let them be how they are. I'll try to mend things with the kids. But if you let your partner, husband or wife, talk to your kids however you want them to, or however they feel like they can, and you try to go mend and set everything okay and say, your dad or your mom didn't mean it this way, at that point I feel like the damage is done. You can't really erase that conversation, right? You can't take away that feeling that somebody has when they're being yelled at, when they're not being listened to. You push somebody too far, eventually they can't come back. It's too far out of reach to bring back. And again, just personal experience, that unfortunately that's what's happened to me. There is just a certain distance that you're gonna have that you're never gonna get back. You accept it. It's hard to get over. You can definitely accept something, even forgive somebody for being put in that situation, but I don't believe you can forget about it. There's a show right now that my wife follows and she watches, and they had that similar conversation where they said, it's okay to forgive, but it doesn't mean you're going to forget. And that's the same situation that I don't want to put my kids in. I don't want to push them the wrong way so far that they eventually just don't, it's just too ingrained in them that they're not going to forget it. I want any little mishaps or bad situations that I might have with our kids now to be forgotten, just with all the good and positive conversations and examples that I set forth for them over the next few years, that they can look back and say, you know what, I can't really recall situations that I was being yelled at, so not to do this, not to do that. For the most part, I want to be a positive example. Marcia has talked about living with us, or at least having a joint compound type of home situation where he'll live next to us or with us until he's in his 40s. For a while when he was younger, obviously it was more of like, I'll just be with you guys forever, but as he grows up, he understands he wants to have his own space, but it's still great to see and to hear that he wants to live with us and be with us, and that's the environment that again, due to my spouse, we provided. Lastly, when it goes back to, am I doing enough for them? I took in different roles, different positions to be able to be at home, but now that I'm at home again, am I providing enough by not working as much. Um, when I am at home, what type of work am I doing at home with them, for them? What examples do I give them? If you look at kids, again, not everybody, not every situation is the same, but for the most part, your kids resemble how you are, what you've done, or what you led them to do. A lot of kids that don't go outside, that they don't participate in any physical activities, they're not interested in outdoors, any type of manual labor. It's not always just the individual. A lot of times it's just by the type of example that the parents set. So I want to make sure our kids aren't completely distraught and bothered by doing those things. So again, we do our best and set the best example of you go out, you experience life, you taste different foods, and especially being in the situation that we've been blessed to have, right? By no means are we rich or we're super well off, we're not wealthy, but we make the most out of our budgets, the money we have, and the opportunities we get, because a big point my wife and myself, the last couple years for sure, has been we need to make sure we enjoy life with them now. We give them experiences that we didn't get growing up, experiences that they want, so they understand what's out there, what type of options and choices they have. So as they get older, they don't feel like they're rushed to do as much because they missed out so much when they were younger. They're able to casually do what they can and what they want throughout the years. Now, if they want to join all that, put it all together all at once, then that's going to be on them. But we want to be able to give them the opportunity to do so, right? And that's pretty much where I'm at, and that's what I've thought about with this topic is, what are you doing? What have you done with your kids? Do you have that situation with your kids? Do you have that open communication? How does that resemble with your parents? Do you have the same type of situation? Do you follow what they did? Do you give the same advice that they gave you? Or are you doing the opposite? You felt like you didn't get any of that, so you're making sure you overcompensate for that same fact, and now you're trying to bombard your kids with information, with knowledge, and sometimes it can't be too much. So that balance, I feel like it is hard for individuals in our age group. Talk about millennials, again, that 35 to 45 age group. We're trying to basically do so much, but not so much that we push our kids away. And we don't want to not do enough, because then as they get older, we don't want them to be bums, basically. Right? Like, we don't want them to fail at life or just fail at certain things. That first failed relationship, we don't want them to be because we didn't give them enough advice. That first job that they didn't get, they wanted, was it because we didn't prep them? Are they driving the vehicle that they want because they gave them that opportunity to get there, or are they driving something that they don't like because that's all they can get, that's all they can manage? So all those questions link, into another. They stack on each other. You go down a rabbit hole of what you can do, can't do, what you should have done. But it's a good thought process to have, especially if you have kids. If you have young kids, I would say don't overwhelm yourself with those thoughts yet. Definitely start taking it pace by pace. Every couple of years, reassess what you've taught them, what you've trained them on, what you want them to do on that next step in life where you see them at. And then once they get mature enough and old enough, typically that teenager age, start talking about bigger life lessons and what's after high school, or even just high school and college transition, what you see them doing or being at in those ages and those years, so that they themselves start to have a plan. The worst thing for a teenager typically is what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Where do I want to be at? Do I want to do the same thing as my parents? Do I want to work harder? Do I want to work less to make more? All those are great topics to have with kids, whether it be your nieces, nephews, your own kids, friends' kids. any information, any knowledge you can pass on to that next generation it is always worth it. I feel like that's how we continue to strive as a society, as human beings. More information, more knowledge we pass on to that next generation, the more they can build on, just like anything else. Hope you guys enjoy that topic. Hope you guys have something to think about. We'll catch you guys next time.